plane is just about touching down now at Vancouver Airport, where the leaders of the lumber industry are waiting to give him their response to his proposition to get the IWA back to work. And waiting downtown for a phone call, if the employers have accepted the Van der Zand proposition, is Jack Monroe and his committee of the IWA. BCTV News and myself too, if it happens in my time, will let you know the developments in this crucial labour struggle. First, here's Steve with the rundown.
The other campaigns. Can the Liberals move up the centre and break the Socrat NDP deadlock? Art Lee is leading a full slate of candidates for the Liberals, and the party thinks they'll elect 4. The Progressive Conservatives are on the move too, behind their new leader, Jim McNeil. He's a school teacher from Abbotsford, and he has 9 candidates behind him and more to come. Tonight, both leaders are in the studio with Webster. But first, John Meier is free. He's been released from a Los Angeles jail after a 12-year nightmare. The former Howard Hughes aide is up first with Webster.
I've known John Myers since I did a broadcast with him in 1974. Myers, and I can say this to his face, has always been a bit of a mystery man. He was a Howard Hughes aide. He was involved in the Watergate inquiry. He was given special landed permission in this country, and he would tell you that was political asylum because somebody was out to get him in the United States. Now, John, you and I have been over this many times, you know, and you've never quite convinced me that you were the perfect Boy Scout in the United States. But tonight I'm going to ask you about your victory in getting a mere 2 years for harboring a fugitive when in fact you had been charged with conspiracy to arrange a murder in Los Angeles of a Canadian while you at that time were in Calgary. Now, have you in fact been convicted of any offense in the United States when you walked out free?
No, actually it was not a guilty plea, it was a NOLO, which is a no contest plea.
Now tell me about the murder charge in the first place. When were you first charged with the conspiracy to murder Alfred Wayne Netter, who was found dead in a Beverly Hills hotel 12 years ago?
Yes, it was 12 years ago was the murder, and 6 years ago was when the process started in extraditing me to the United States.
What was the case against you? What did they allege in the charge?
Well, at the time, in 1980, it was a conspiracy charge naming myself and 2 others, an attorney in Canada and an individual in the United States who, in fact, they said committed the murder.
And your part was supposed to have been in a hotel room in Calgary when you allegedly exhibited knowledge of an event which had just happened, to wit, the murder in the United States.
That's right. How they extradited me, to one point I was extradited on, was that supposedly my wife informed me in Calgary of a murder that took place before it was made public, which was just not true.
I must, in your favor, point out something I've never forgotten, that the judge who ordered you extradited, after that, wrote to the Minister of Justice and kind of admitted he might have been wrong in ordering you extradited, and he asked the Minister of Justice to review it, right?
That's true.
Did the Minister of Justice review it before you were extradited?
No, they promised me at the time that I would have a hearing on an appeal prior to extraditing me. I had an attorney that time, Jesse McNeil, who was prepared to go to Ottawa, and instead I would just whisk out of the country.
Did you feel that was an unfair action on part of the Canadian government?
Oh, definitely.
Now, how many, you went down there when first, 3 years ago, 6 years ago?
I was down there 3 years ago. I spent total of the time up here in the United States, I spent 2 years in prison. That's how they came up with the so-called no contest plea.
You spent, the last 3 years, you spent 2 years in jail?
2 years.
As a matter of fact, you were out in bail at one time, and the guy who put up the bail was kind of frightened off and withdrew the bail.
Well, he was frightened off by the prosecutor, who said that he had information I was going to leave the United States and not come back, which just never happened.
Now, tell me about this NOLO plea, this no contest plea. What happened? You were still facing trial, and you say you were totally innocent of all of this, don't you?
That's right.
But what you did was you agreed to a 2-year prison term for harboring a fugitive.
No, you see...
Did you harbor a fugitive?
No, obviously not. What happened was that the prosecution made the offer that they just wanted to end the case. They were afraid to throw out the case because they were afraid that I would then sue. So they came back with the offer that if I pleaded no contest to a charge. They would recommend it to the judge. The judge would go along with it, which he did, and I would be sent home. So they then went down the list of all the charges. After finding out I did 2 years, and they said, well, gee, this fits in perfectly, harboring a fugitive. So that's how the no contest on a harboring fugitive took place.
Are you telling me that if there had been a 2-year sentence for dropping an empty cigarette packet on the street, and if that were a federal offense in the States, they could have said, okay, John, we want to release you. You spent 2 years in jail, so plead no contest to dropping a cigarette package on the street.
That's true.
Is that right?
That's true. That's how they did it.
Now, who made the no contest deal with you? Was it the,
Well,
what
the
do you call him? Prosecuting
prosecutor.
attorney?
Yes. The prosecutor made it. The prosecutor made it to my attorney. My attorney and the prosecutor met with the judge. The judge saw that there was no case. I saw that they could drag this case on for another 5 or 6 years. So to make it easy and just get rid of it, I agreed to plead no contest and come home. And that's the end of the case.
No contest to the technical offense of harboring a fugitive, which they did not prove in any way, shape, or form, or present a case on.
That's right. There was no case on anything. There was no case to begin with 6 years ago.
It's a hell of a way to run a system of justice, isn't it?
Oh, I think it's telling on a family. I have a wife and 4 children, and I don't think it's a pleasant way of doing things.
So that's you free and clear now, although you've now got a conviction in the States for harboring a fugitive.
I don't know how technically I have a no contest plea. I have no idea what the law looks
Tell
like
me,
down there in
John,
the States.
are your troubles over?
Well,
What
I
did it
hope
cost
so.
you down there? Did you
I
have to
hope
pay
so.
for your own legal expenses down
No,
there?
what happened in the United States, because they extradited me, the government then agreed to pay for my attorney and pay all the legal costs, which must have costed them hundreds of thousands of dollars. I know they admitted in court that my case cost a few $1 million, and if they proceeded on the case, it would cost them a few more $1 million. So the judge looked at the case before he agreed to the charge.
But you had threatened them that if you won the case, you would sue.
Yes, I told them that if they took me to court, I would definitely sue because there was no case.
And you'd say that the prosecutor said, well, let's get rid of Meier altogether. We'll sentence him to the time he spent in jail down here, and that's it, finished.
That's right. And the judge agreed, and the judge said, the judge waived probation, and the judge waived my having to stay down there. There was also a possible fine involved, up to $50,000. The judge made it $100 and said, this is it, you can just go home.
Can you
That's
go back there anytime you want still?
I can go back there, I guess, tomorrow morning.
Now, what about all your old troubles? When you came up here after the Watergate inquiry and you'd been friendly with Donald Nixon, who was involved in all of that. Is that all behind you now? As Howard Hughes, weren't they after you for income tax at one time?
The IRS was, yes.
What happened to that one?
Well, that's been pending since 1972. That's how Nixon started this machine, this bureaucracy rolling in 1972. I ran for the United States Senate in New Mexico.
Do you reckon it was
Lost.
Nixon who started the tax thing
Oh, I
against
know
you?
for a fact. I mean, I know it was because if you read Ehrlichman's book, his latest book, you'll see in there where he discusses John Meier.
Does John Meier now go back into total anonymity without any ghosts from the past of his father association with either the Netter crowd or the Hughes crowd?
Well, it was nothing to do with the Netter crowd. I don't know what
No,
the
no,
Netter crowd was. With the Hughes, who knows? You know, it's like a train out of control. Nixon started his rolling, and it rolls
What are you going to
downhill.
do now, John?
What am I going to do? Try to get my life back in order and relax a bit after all these years.
Got lots of money?
No, wish I did.
No money?
No, I don't have any. Wish I was handling the show.
Anyway, it's an experience you can't have in Canada. I can't imagine a trial, no matter the merits or otherwise of the trial, ending with a no contest plea, as John Meier says, well, let's pick an offense that will cover the time you spent in jail and you're over. My thanks to John Meier. Okay. Next, the leaders of the lesser parties after the break. Yeah, but it was just gone down there. I thought he'd be killed in prison, to be quite honest.
Many years ago when I was...
Mr. Lee, and then one segment with Mr. McNeil.
I think I want to go to... how many segments have I got left?
4.
No, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go one segment with Mr. Lee, come up the phones, right? And then I'll do one segment. Many segments we've got left? Well, why don't I do one with Art, go to the phones with Art, come up with McNeil, and go to the phones with both of them. That's a better balance in terms of the probabilities of success of the parties. So I'll give you a section to yourself, too.
All right. Thank you.
So that's fair.
Sure.
Any man who is a leader of the Liberal Party in British Columbia is ipso facto, quod erat demonstrandum, a man of courage. Is that not correct, Art Lee?
I really believe that I am a man of courage, but I'm a man of courage for the people of the province of British Columbia.
Nice phrase. Now, is that new red jacket a gift from John Turner to establish clearly that Liberal red is in style?
No, this is actually a gift from my wife. She says that you've got not only the substance, but she says you've got the style and you've got to start looking like it, and so therefore she gave me this red vest. David Peterson started with a red tie. She said I got a red tie on and a red handkerchief pocket here, but now the Liberals here in BC, I've instructed them all to wear red vests so they can identify who they are, and we'll be debating with anybody and we'll talk to anybody.
And, of course, this is supplied out of monies from the federal Liberal coffers now that you're receiving large bundles of greenbacks from Iona and John Turner. Is that correct?
Well, we're not receiving lots of greenbacks from them, but they're out here helping us. Iona, as a matter of fact, out there right now in the Lower Mainland campaigning on behalf of the provincial party.
Now, how many candidates are you running?
We're running over 60. As of earlier this afternoon, before coming on the program, I checked with our campaign manager, and that's what he told me.
In 1983, you got a tearfully pathetic 3% of the vote.
That's correct, but according to the first poll that was done by this network, we were at 6, we're now at 12%, so we're gaining momentum.
And you might even make a respectable showing in 1 or 2 seats.
That's right. Well, it's my job to elect some Liberals to the legislature over there in Victoria, because we believe that we need the voice of reason in Victoria.
Why are you running, and you yourself are running, as I recall, in Vancouver Little Mountain?
Well, first of all, we've got the organization.
You've got 4 tough candidates, McCarthy and Mowat, Colin Kelly, the bus driver, and Adrian Peacock for the NDP.
Well, it's our hope to be able to come right up through the middle, and we have a very good organization, a lot of volunteers, and keeping in mind that people are not very, very happy. For example, let's just talk about Little Mountain. The Premier announced that they're going to be building SkyTrain somewhere out to Richmond, and it may go down Canby Street, it may go down Arbutus, and Joyce Statton and I, we're the 2 candidates that are running in that area.
Are you against progress? Don't you want the SkyTrain through Little Mountain?
First of all, does it make economic sense?
Oh, no.
Secondly, where is he going to put it? Is it going to go down Canby? Is it going to go down Arbutus? And if they can't resolve the noise pollution problems on the other parts of the city, how can they expect to go ahead and build this in Vancouver Little Mountain? And I'm informed that the Premier didn't even consult with Mrs. McCarthy when he announced or made that announcement that they were going to build it out to Richmond.
They forgot to consult with Stanley Kwok when they decided to keep part of Expo 2.
That's right.
But how dare you go against the state of euphoria in British Columbia today, where Bill Vandersam can wipe out the sins of the past of the Bennett regime and go in, as he will do, on his shining charger.
But that's my...
What's wrong with Vandersam?
Well, let's just take a look. I'm not going to go back and talk about his statements with shovels or frogs. Let's just take a look at some of his statements that he's made since then. He's talked about making the city of Vancouver this huge trade hub. And to me, you know, it's like extending Fantasyland from Richmond all the way out through the Lower Mainland. He's talking about special economic zones, giving away huge tax incentives to foreign companies who aren't necessarily going to stay here in the province of BC. We Liberals, we've got specific concrete programs that are going to help create jobs here and establish jobs, permanent jobs. But let's also take a look. You know, when he's talking about the future of this province, up there in Prince George, there is a Center for Advanced Resource Technology. And we're a resource province. And up there in Prince George, he said he would do everything possible on October 3rd to help this particular institute. The federal government's already kicked in some money. He hasn't done it. It's all rhetoric. You know, he talks about island highways. He talks about building 3 prisons. He talks about this 500,000 jobs, some here down here in the Lower Mainland, by giving away huge tax incentives to people. And yet he will not look after, which is really the lifeblood of this province, which is our resource industries. And that seems to me, this is what people, I think, have to be very careful. What they are seeing is not necessarily what they're going to get. I still see a lot of the ghosts of Bill Bennett lurking in the background with some of the people in the Sentinel group. It's the kind of campaign, you know, say nothing, do nothing, hide and seek. So the people will elect me, and maybe, you know, maybe if things turn out, well, maybe I might do some of these things for you, but maybe they'll forget all of the sins of the past.
I have here a letter you've written to the Honourable William Vandersam. Tell me why.
Well, look, I've written to him. When I confronted him at the University of British Columbia. And I hate to say that, the word confront. I mean, in a democracy, when we should be debating these issues in front of you or in front of a televised debate, education, the economy, I have to confront him. And the first thing he says, Art, did you make an appointment? Well, I've done that. I'm now writing him, and I'm saying, look, Bill Vander Zalm, I would like to make an appointment with you to meet on Sunday, October the 12th, at the legislative buildings at 12 o'clock noon to discuss economic issues. And if that is not convenient to you, between now and the end of the campaign, I'll make my time any time that he wishes to choose that's subject to his convenience. Because he says, you know, I have to make an appointment, and then his campaign people have the audacity to turn around and put a gag order on all of his candidates. I mean, who ever heard of this? I mean, this is a campaign where people are to try and find out what the issues are.
This is a selling of charisma.
Exactly. And my point is, you can sell charisma so much, but what you're seeing isn't necessarily what you're going to get.
Am I correct in saying that without fiscal responsibility, you are saying as a cheap election lure that you would increase welfare rates by 20%?
Sure. It's not a cheap election. I'll tell you, since 82, 83, 1 out of every 5 British Columbians right now is either on UIC or welfare. And there are people, Jack, you know, a lot of people usually think it's people working on the green chains. I've seen engineers, and I've seen teachers, and I've seen business people down at the food bank lines. It is getting to be a very, very serious problem. So what we're saying, this is a one-step measure, and then we want those income security programs. I mean, the current Social Credit Party, the New Democrats, and my party, both federally and provincially, we support this income security program. We've got to pull all of these hodgepodge of social programs together, and that's what we're talking about.
Increase education spending by how much?
180 million in post-secondary over a 3-year period. That's a 10% increase a year. Keeping in mind that this government has frozen the level of educational funding since 82, 83. And so really, in a sense, we're trying to catch up. We couldn't absorb $300 million, but we feel that responsibly that we can absorb $60 million a year.
Where's the money going to come from when the current deficit on the budget ending at the end of March, beginning of April, is $900 million of borrowed money to run the government this past year?
A matter of priorities. We're talking about...
No island highway?
Well, just a moment here. We still don't know exactly whether or not he's going to go ahead with a pipeline from the mainland over to Vancouver Island. We don't know about Site C. These are a couple of priorities right now that they still have on their plate. We're saying, no, let's start investing in our renewable resources. Let's start investing in the people of the province of British Columbia. And I hate to say it, Jack, we have a terrible unemployment situation, and many of our programs are triggered because of the high unemployment. And once we get the unemployment down under our programs, then let's start looking at balanced budget. Then let's start looking at eating up this huge deficit left behind by Bill Bennett.
Have you thought out any economic recovery program, or are you just the same as the rest of them, a few little grants and subsidies here, there?
Oh no. We've done this, and on there I've got towards a better British Columbia, a liberal agenda for progress, the policies and practices of a liberal government in British Columbia. It goes on. And it is very people-orientated. It's an investment in our people, our renewable resources, places a lot of emphasis on education in the broadest context of the word, but it also attaches to it a budget cost. Our programs cost $600 million, $660, and when you take into our revenue projections, we're leaving $220 million that will be added to the current debt. That's less than 1% of our total provincial debt. That's the operating debt and the contingent liability we also have for BC Hydro. But we're talking about specific things. We're talking about 3-year tax-free holidays for small business. We're talking about a small business development bond. We're talking about a stock equity program to help the value added, to give them that venture capital.
A stock equity program like Bennett was talking about, whereby you could write off your losses but collect your profits and help those who sell penny stocks on the market in Vancouver?
Quite different, because what we're aiming at there is we're aiming at people that are going to invest in our resources and manufacturing. These are the areas that can be done. And people that are listed in the Vancouver Stock Exchange, quite different from his.
One final question. Have all the Liberals who crossed the floor and defected, have they now left? No, McGeer's still there.
Pat McGeer's still there.
Shameful, isn't it?
It's shameful. And these people are turncoats. They did an absolute disservice, not only to the party, but to the people of the province of British Columbia when they did that in 1975.
Let's see if it's true. About 12% of the people are going to vote for you, according to the BC TV poll. And let's see what questions you have for Liberal leader Art Lee, immediately after the break. Who's your principal bagman? There was a day when the Liberals had every bagman in every office downtown make a phone call and tin boxes filled with money.
Well, we have an anonymous bagman called Bagman. You know, we're really running a cheap campaign. And to the effect, Von Palmer, one of the columnists, said that he heard there was some difficulty with Grace raising money, so he said, put in an ad in the newspaper and call it Bagman. We've raised $3,000 so far.
You put an ad in called Bagman?
Bagman. Well, it's got the address of the Liberal Party there, which is 6
And you got 3,000?
Yeah, it's got the address there, 6th floor, 210 West Broadway. And I'm asking people, donate to the anonymous Bagman. It's, you know, you can make it anonymous or tax receivable.
Advertising in the papers, that's most unusual.
Well, this is the only sort of advertising I get.
You might lose your power base. Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon. Mr. Lee, I'm going to be voting NDP, partly because I've seen so many Liberals defect to the Socreds, and I still think that they're mostly for big business compared to the NDP. And as well, I think that the myth about polarity between Socreds and NDP is just that. It's a myth created by the media. But besides that, I'm just wondering if maybe you and Mr. Skelly both think to hell with Mr. Van der Zem and the two of you get together and debate yourselves.
There's your question.
Well, I'd be quite prepared to debate with Bob Skelly if Bob wants to do that, but there is a very fundamental difference between the Liberals and the New Democrats. But I can assure the people that I am not an opportunist. Anybody who wants to be a Liberal is not an opportunist today. You know, most of the campaigning that I've done up until this point has actually been financed out of my own pocket with the help of a lot of other people.
There's one thing you must concede to Van der Zem. He did not come out with the old Bennett line of godless socialism of free enterprise, and Van der Zem is aiming at a non-confrontational attitude for the moment.
For the moment. But, you know, some of his musings, Jack, if you take a look at it, I mean, is this a moderate that talks about elimination of the minimum wage in certain sectors? I don't think so. Or when he was talking about abortion, when it appeared he was trying to impose some of his own views. These are not necessarily the person who was a moderate.
When he said he didn't want too many female candidates.
That's right.
Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I'm 20 years old right now, and I went to school when Mr. Van der Zem was the education minister. Now, I feel that myself, I have suffered because of his attitude towards the teachers. The teachers, all they ever got us to do was to write essays and stuff about Mr. Van der Zem. Like, that's what we did in school, okay?
You mean kind of hate Van der Zem?
I'd like to say also that Mr. Van der Zem, he wants everybody to work for $4.50 an hour, and I'm 20 years old, and I'm working for $4.50 an hour right now, and I'd like to know what Mr. Lee is going to do about the youth unemployment situation.
Well, first and foremost, with respect to education, which is long-term, the future for jobs here in the province of British Columbia is going to be coming from our service area, and that usually requires a lot of very well-educated people. And that's why in our program we call it a knowledge-based economy. Whether it be in agriculture, whether it be somebody that's going to be working with computers, we place a lot of emphasis on education. But a lot of the programs here are to help people, apprenticeship type programs, whether they be in agriculture or whether they be in business. But a lot of the small business, because I've run into a lot of young people who want to go into business, small business in particular.
Go ahead, please.
Hello?
That's you, ma'am.
Yeah, I'd like to know, when I was younger, my mother, she was a single mother 20 years ago. I'm 30 now. Mm-hmm. And she used to clean homes, and she was only allowed to make $100 per month to feed a family of three, 3 children and herself. Now, I'm in the situation where my husband is on UIC. And for 10 years now, he's been on and off either UIC or welfare. Plus, he's taken courses, but never got into the job because they were laying people off or whatever in that particular field. Now, what type of incentive can people who are unemployed or on welfare have if they are only allowed to make so much money per month? Or what type of programs are there to organize?
Can you help it at all, Aunt?
Well, first and foremost, you talked about people that are receiving social assistance right now. They're only allowed to make so much. I think it's $100, and the first time it's been increased in, I don't know, eons.
Yeah.
But that's hardly enough. I mean, we're trying to encourage people to get off welfare and go to work, and there's a real disincentive there, and that's why we like these income security programs. I'm not so sure what you're talking about, but in terms of the education, that is where rehabilitation, a lot of people talk about youth unemployment, which is a big problem. But there's also a bigger problem with people that are 45 and upwards. We have lost a lot of people in our forestry sector here, in our resource-based economy. And this is the area that we've got to try and take a hard look at retraining people. Those people who want to retrain. Obviously not, a lot of people may not be willing to do so. But that is the area. I'm not so sure if your husband falls under that category.
Oh, sorry,
Hello?
ma'am. Go on.
Hello?
Hello, finish up.
Okay, what about the average person who's 30 years old, who has a family of 4 to support,
He can't do it.
okay, and he's making, let's say, $900 a month?
God knows how to do it. Hold on, ma'am. There's really enough. See, this is one of the big problems. Take New Westminster, where all these men were laid off. Men with 24, 25 years seniority. Who can help them? Unless you drop the pension age considerably.
But I don't think that's the right way. Now, hopefully a lot of these people can be retrained to do something else, but we've really got to take a look at establishing, and that's why we like our stock equity, more of the manufacturing, the secondary, the value-added type industries.
We may be seeing a kind of lost generation caught in the middle here.
That's right.
Beyond the retraining and not old enough for pensions, and that's a very dull outlook for lots of people. Go ahead from Williams Lake.
I'd like to ask Mr. Lee what I could do to help him be elected.
Well, I think first and foremost, you can help our 2 candidates up there,
You have to?
Mike Darcy, and we also have another woman, Sylvia Warren, who will be nominated very soon there, unless she's challenged. But Mike Darcy has been nominated for quite some time, and he's a lawyer from Williams Lake, and Sylvia Warren is a community activist from 108 Mile House. Get behind these 2 candidates.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. How long till the break? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, me?
Nanaimo.
Right. Mr. Lee, you seem to be a very intelligent man, and yet it surprises me to see you wasting your time running for a party that the legacy of the Liberal Party in our country is so ripe in the memory of all of BC in terms of the disaster that the federal Liberals have caused, that the chances of a provincial Liberal Party ever recovering here, in my opinion, are just non-existent. Now, you seem to be a moderate person. Why don't you join the new Social Credit Party and get in with a winning team? And I think your ideas were very acceptable to the Social Credit Party.
Well, first and foremost, I'm not a political opportunist. If I was, I would probably be running for the Socreds. They asked me to run for them in '83. I am not. I am a man of convictions and principles, and I'm saying to the people of the province of British Columbia, come along with us right now and join in with us, the Liberals, because I am saying to the people of the province of British Columbia is what you're seeing right now with Mr. Van der Zam isn't necessarily what you're going to get. What has he said in specific, concrete proposals to help the people of the province of British Columbia? I don't have any panacea type of solutions. It takes a lot of hard work and a lot of hard thinking.
Could you ever join the Social Credit Party?
Absolutely not. And I'll tell you why. Their track record when it deals with people and human beings has not been that attractive.
I'll be back after the break. I can tell you that the FIR people have just left Premier Van der Zam at the VIP room at the airport, and that Jack Monroe of the IWA is on his way now to the airport to talk with Premier Van der Zam. So there obviously has been a reaction from the industry to the Van der Zam proposal, and Monroe, who doesn't know it yet, I don't suppose, is on his way to see if whatever is developing is acceptable to him. So it looks like there's going to be some kind of a break in the Van der Zam proposition. I don't know whether it's yea or nay, or whether Monroe would turn it down and be left holding the bag, or whether the FIR has come some way or not. But stay tuned to BC TV, because as soon as it happens at the airport, you'll know about it. Now, I've called in the leader of the other party, Jim McNeil, the leader of the Progressive Conservative Party, who's only running a jury of 12 candidates so far in the election. Is that right?
At this point, that's what we're at, Jack.
Well, first of all, you know, do you think there's any hope for the Progressive Conservative Party when, obviously, through the Bud Smiths and whatnot of the world, you're tied right in with social credit?
Well, I disagree that we're tied right in with social credit. Sure, there are some people with some obvious federal Tory connections left in social credit, but there are just as many, in fact, perhaps a preeminent number that have federal Liberal connections. That's a problem that both Art and I share.
How long have you been leader of the Progressive Conservative Party?
A month and a half, Jack.
Are you getting any support from the federal Conservatives?
I am getting support behind the scenes. I will get as much support as any other provincial Tory leader in Canada, because the Prime Minister has made it quite clear that he won't directly see the federal party involved in any province.
So therefore you're not getting any money from them?
Well, we could even do that, but it will happen behind the scenes and it won't happen publicly.
Now tell me who you are, Jim, because this is the first time we've met.
Sure. Well, under different circumstances, I'm a school principal in Abbotsford School District. I've been a school principal now for 17 years. Not all in that district. I spent time in the Caribou. I spent time
Were you voted in as leader of the Progressive Conservatives?
I was voted in by the nominated members of the party and by the party executive, because you probably recall, and you've talked to Peter Pollan, our past leader.
Oh yes, of course, it was Peter Pollan.
That he retired very suddenly for health reasons. He's very unwell even now, and I regret that greatly. We were facing an election. An election was
So
pending.
you had the courage and the intestinal fortitude to step in, try and get some candidates together, even though you only had 1% of the vote in the 1983 election.
That's correct. I'll point out, however, that that's a misleading figure. We only had 11 candidates, and in my riding, the one I ran in '83, we had 13%. So who knows how many percent we'd have had if we'd had more candidates.
And you're running in Central Fraser Valley.
That's correct.
Now, do you have any platform worth talking about? Or is it...
Absolutely. You want to hear about it?
Give me a couple of points.
Okay. First of all, the single most important issue of this election is rapidly becoming, are we going to have a balanced opposition in the legislature? And we have seen, Jack, a two-party monopoly in this province for many years, and we're in real danger of having a one-party monopoly now, and I don't think the British parliamentary system functions very well when there's absolutely no constructive opposition. So I'm quite pleased to say that that has become the #1 issue of this election.
People are afraid of a Van der Zalm steamroller.
No question about it. Vandermania seems still relatively alive and well. Whether the edge will come off it before the election is done, we'll have to wait and see. Now, that is not my first choice for an issue in the election. My first choice would be jobs and the creation of jobs.
Well,
and that's going to happen through paying attention to the primary industries that have served this province so well in the past, but paying much better attention than we have.
How much damage has social credit done to BC?
Well, I think that there's been a tremendous lack of long-term planning shown, and I think there's been a tremendous lack of fiscal responsibility. And those are two things that our party wants to see restored to the legislature of British Columbia. We'll do that initially from the opposition benches. We obviously won't do it from the government benches this time.
What do you think Van der Zalm's going to do as Premier? Are you afraid of Van der Zalm, or do you think he'll be a good middle-of-the-road, non-confrontational, formal Liberal?
He was rejected by our party. Remember that, Jack. I'm very concerned. We have yet to see the specifics behind some of the proposals that he's talking about. And I agree with Jim. I think there's a real big danger here with Bob Skelly, you know, got off to a very shaky start, not providing very effective opposition during this campaign. We in the Liberal Party, we're fortunate. We've been able to put together some 60 or so candidates. We're prepared to take on that opposition if called upon after October 22nd.
You think you might get 12%?
I certainly hope so. That's up to the people of the province of British Columbia. And hopefully we will get even better than that.
Okay, I'm going to telephones, and I'll give you each a chance to answer any issues that come up. Go ahead, please. Hello.
Hello there.
That's you, sir.
That's me?
Yep.
Okay. My name is Mark Kelly. I'm calling from Balzac, Alberta, where a friend of mine has passed me through to your show. And my question is directed to Mr. Lee. My question is specific is this. I was in Hull at a party about 3 weeks ago, and this friend of mine, who's a political sort of
junkie
of a certain sense, told me that what's going to happen in this election in BC is that the Socreds are going to run it through again, unfortunately, that the NDP is in disarray, that the Liberals are reorganizing, and that the best political intelligence, the best political thinking that is coming out of BC at the moment is coming from the Queen Charlottes, from a couple individuals in the Haida Nation, and that the Liberal Party, if it's going to get its act together here and take the next election, not this one, they're in for another 3 or 4 years.
Okay, but tell me, you're phoning from where? Through
Balzac, Alberta. You know, as in Honoré de Balzac, you know, the French
You're on Balzac?
Yeah.
And are you watching us on television in Balzac?
No, I told you, I'm patched through by speakerphone.
Oh, you sound like a bit of a nut to me.
No, I'm not.
He's not. He said we're going to,
Lee, I'm
maybe not this time, but take it next time, Jack. Careful, careful.
Okay, the boy from Balzac. Goodbye and God bless you. Takes all kinds to make a world. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Mr. Ali.
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to ask you, what are your incentives behind welfare on you raising it? I think you noted that it was 17% you vouched for?
20%.
20%. What we're talking...
20%, okay. Wouldn't it be better if there was an incentive program set up?
We're doing that, plus what we're saying, it's a one-shot deal, because these people have been frozen since 82, 83, and we're looking for income security programs. We also want to allow people on social assistance to receive more money, make more money, so they can get off welfare. But the income security programs are much like the child tax credit. In other words, to get people above the poverty lines and get them over that hump, to be able to get to them work.
If I may commit sacrilege, I remember when W.A.C. Bennett, long gone, advocated a negative income tax and a guaranteed income to everyone in the country. Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Hello.
That's you, ma'am.
Hello. I'd just like to ask both the candidates a question, please.
Yes.
And I've heard everybody... Hello?
Yes. Carry on, ma'am.
Okay. Everybody's been saying what they're going to do for people on welfare and UIC, but I haven't heard no one say anything about the men, the women in jail. Are they going to do anything, like any programs for them? To reform them, to help them out?
It's not normally a matter for campaigning, rehabilitation of people in prisons, ma'am, and it's a federal and a provincial responsibility, and I've never known it become an issue in a campaign.
Well, about the only way it can come in, though, is, for example, the Premier said he was going to build, 3 more prisons he was going to get rid of. Ocala. But for sure, I mean, most of our provincial jails are people 2 years and under. But it seems to me if we were to attack a lot of our social programs, had a lot of education, people say there isn't the kind of violence or the problems in the street. If we would get rid of those, then we would have less of those kinds of offenses.
If you can settle the grassroots.
That's right.
I'd just like to chime in the same thing, that perhaps we have the social problems to the degree that we have because there's not gainful employment out there for people. We have to stimulate the economy, and these people are going to have something to work at after they've been rehabilitated.
We're going to have $8,000 to $10,000 work when Expo closes in a couple of days.
That's right.
Most of the young people. Well, go ahead, please.
Yes, Jack. I have a question that is good for both of your people there. When they talk about putting money into education, are they talking about raising the average $33,000 salary of teachers in BC, considering that the average wage in Greater Vancouver is $18,000 or $19,000?
There's a good loaded question for you, Jim. Average salary, $33,000, average wage, $18,000. Would extra money go to the well-paid teachers?
I would like to see extra money go to education to pay for more teachers, not necessarily increased salaries. I want the money to go where it's going to do the most good immediately. And right now there are a tremendous number of teachers who aren't employed at all. So while I don't preclude wage increases, because there are people that may well do, we've got tremendous inequities around the province, and we need more money in education, yes, not necessarily salary increases.
We want quality education. We're not only talking about literacy, but we need computer literacy for a lot of our young people. We're talking about helping students that are under tough, difficult times with student bursaries and loans programs.
Less than the $33,000 wage that's now being paid.
Gentlemen, I've got to take a break for some special reason. I've got another segment, haven't I? Oh, yeah. Forgive me for interrupting. I'll be back with Art Lee and Jim McNeil after the break. I suppose one of the real biggest issues facing British Columbians at the moment is the decision either on the 9th or the 16th of October as to the countervail application by the Coalition for Fair Lumber Imports in the United States. And Mr. Van der Zalm is apparently making great hay that he's come up with a proposition which might prevent the countervail, eh?
Well, this is why I say the people of the province of British Columbia should be very chary about this man. What he has done is publicly admitted that we are now subsidizing. In effect, you know, it's like standing up on Burrard Street Bridge and saying, I did it. And this is a quasi-judicial body in the United States that's going to decide How is that judge going to ignore that? Secondly, if we lose that decision, and yet we have a very good chance of winning, we've lost any good chance of appealing to the General Agreement on Trades and Tariffs, and we could get damages. I find it absolutely incredulous. I think, sure, review the stumpage, but let's do it behind the scenes. You know, I personally believe right now that the federal government feels very, very uncomfortable having to carry the can for Bill Vander Zalm on this one. I think he's absolutely blown it.
There's no question he would seem to have pulled the rug right out from under the federal government in their delicate negotiations. He's gambled on it. I think he's gambled without appropriate knowledge. Having taken the gamble, I suppose there's very little we can do about it now. I mean, he went public with it, and we're stuck with it. But if it's a game of poker and you want to draw the analogy to it, and I'm not a gambling man, Jack, he's been called by the Americans now. They say, okay, fine, you say you've admitted that you were wrong, that you weren't. He's been
you
called,
were subsidized.
You've admitted you were subsidizing, but it's not enough. So having taken that gamble, is he going to now take the chance that countervailing duties will be applied? All that money will go to the United States and we won't get a penny.
Go ahead from Nelson, BC.
Yes, Mr. Lee.
Yes,
I would like to know why we do not have a Liberal candidate in Nelson.
we do. Toby Smith, I'm not sure if he's been nominated
Not
as
that
yet,
I've even heard of.
but he will be running
He
for
is
us.
Social Credit.
Pardon?
We have only two parties, NDP and Social Credit.
Well, we will be running a Liberal, and as I've indicated, we'll be running Liberals. We have some 60 or more right now that will be nominated running throughout the province of British Columbia. We're prepared. We're prepared to take Bill Vander Zalm on.
Just a minute. Are you sure the name of your candidate is or will be Toby Smith?
I assume he will be nominated. I don't think there's going to be any difficulty, but
He's the
you know,
only
it could be
Liberal.
challenged.
He's the only Liberal in Nelson.
Well, no, there's a lot more Liberals than that, but...
Yes, there are a lot more Liberals because I would vote Liberal if we had one, but when you go down to the polls, there's two parties.
Well, I'm reliably informed by my vast research staff that the meeting for Toby Smith's nomination in Nelson as a Liberal tonight, free plug upon free plug, is tonight.
It's tonight.
It's tonight.
Get out.
Why is it not compulsory that we do not have four parties in each riding?
You can't make a voting in a democracy compulsory, madam.
Well, they sure did seatbelts.
Are you saying we're flying by the seat of our pants without a seatbelt with Vander Zalm now? I don't know.
Yes, I thoroughly agree with you.
Thank you, ma'am. Compulsory candidates, that's what we want. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good evening, Right Honourable Art Lee. I have two questions, one from New West and one about health care for gender identity clinic. There isn't one in British Columbia.
What?
And I've been on hormone medication for 14 years, been very suicidal when I got back from Toronto. Where is there going to be any kind of help for people? I've been on MHI Omit 14 years. I'm very successful in the community as a woman. The other question is, what's Tim Courtney's chances in New Westminster, and what three other candidates have the chances of getting in besides yourself?
Well, I think all of the Liberal candidates have a very good shot at it. If the people...
What about New West? I mean, I'm undecided.
Yeah, if
Voted
the
NDP since 72.
I think that all of our candidates have a good shot at it. If the people will come behind us and join with us, because I think we've got to stop this juggernaut. But Tim Courtney included has a very good chance.
Go ahead, please.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
I'd like to know what both the Liberals and the Progressive Conservatives would do for the film industry in this province.
Well, first and foremost, I watched with great aghast what happened where the federal government's in this withholding tax about 65%. I can tell you personally, I've been helping a couple of movie companies move here to the province of British Columbia, so I've been watching that very closely. But beyond that, I think what has to happen here, that people of the province of British Columbia, there's a great need for cultural types of industry, and this government, you know, has always sort of put down culture, whether it be films or folk arts or whatever. But I think this withholding tax is really the one that's driving these film industries out.
We put that to Jim. A sure finance minister, apparently in a new U.S. tax deal, has brought in the 15% withholding tax, possibility of total Canadian income tax on American film producers in this country, and he's going to drive a minimum of 80 million and perhaps 200 million out of British Columbia this very season.
Okay, Jack. Well,
Your man in Ottawa.
My man in Ottawa. Well, don't forget, I'm running provincially, and I'm not always going to defend stands that are taken by my federal counterparts, just as Jack,
should hope not.
Just as Art won't always defend things that are taken by his federal party, I'm sure. And it's because there are separations of power, provincial and federal. I don't want to see anything that drives investment potential away from British Columbia. We need it all.
You've only got 12 candidates, but you've sure got the pattern already, Jimmy. And you've only been in well, you've been in politics a while.
I've been in it for a while, but I've only been the leader for a month and a half.
Sounds like a natural. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
That's you, sir.
Yeah. I'm Mike Schoenhardt phoning from Burnaby. I'm an SFU history student. I'd like to ask Mr. McNeil what he sees as the major difference, ideological or on policy, between the Conservatives and the Socreds. Yes, that's right.
Okay, thank you. Well, it's not the first time I've had that question, so I suppose I'm getting a little better at it. Let me suggest that one of the major differences right now is one of integrity. And I don't want to demean individual social credit candidates, but there is a question of integrity when the word opportunism slips in.
You're talking about conflict of interest?
You can talk about conflict of interest if you want. You can talk about responsibility to the private enterprise agenda that they're supposed to have, but how is it responsible for a private enterprise agenda when a debt of some 19 billion, Jack, accumulated, counting Crown Corporation debts, has been allowed to be amassed in British Columbia? That's a lack of integrity to a philosophy that they say they espouse, and yet they spend more than the socialists do.
What about a $34 million loan to Louisiana Pacific to put up a $40 million plant? What about that?
So much for free enterprise. That's why I say we believe in free enterprise, but we also believe in people. And let's talk about the other one. I mean, you try to divorce yourself from the federal government about all those shares in Cominco, the federal government, and now the province of British Columbia. You know, it's high time that government got out of the business of buying shares. It is high time that we set fair water rate levies to help our industries. It's high time that we had a small business development bond like the Liberal Party talks about. It's high time we help business. We're not in the business of buying shares.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, I couldn't agree more.
Go ahead, please.
It's amazing how similar our agenda is.
Go ahead, please.
Hello?
That's you, sir.
Yeah, I was wondering if either candidate was planning on upgrading the highway, Barnett Highway through Port Moody, Haney, and out in this direction. There was a 90-foot hole in the Barnett Highway, and there was a lot
Are you going to do a social credit, if in some miraculous chance you win, and blacktop the whole of British Columbia?
You know, now I'm going to be accused of being a social creditor, but I think that unquestionably many of our highways need to be improved. The Island Highway, the one that he talked about, the Hope Princeton Highway. You know, there's been too much emphasis on certain segments. You know, the Coquihalla went ahead at full speed, and I really think that was the former Premier's gift to the people in the Okanagan.
Well, it's still got to go to Kelowna.
Oh, I know, but it's about high time that we share the wealth a little bit here, share the wealth a little bit more with the blacktop.
Spread the blacktop a little thinner over more of the province.
Well, no, spread a little bit thicker, but a little bit wider around the province as well.
But had that hole happened at rush hour, there would have been a minimum of 9 cars going down.
Oh, I know, terrible, just terrible. But they fixed it, haven't they?
Yeah, but the rest of the highway's in bad need of improvement.
Let me offer a suggestion about highways just briefly. We may have the money to do more of the highway repairs and pay some attention to other highways than the show ones or the new bridges if we don't get into expensive and unnecessary ALRT extensions. For instance, I don't think that an ALRT crossing to Surrey is going to be necessary in the immediate future or perhaps ever. We've got existing rail tracks, BC Hydro. We could run a rail bus that had a brief experiment at much less money than we'll ever build the LRT extension.
Gentlemen, and to you first, Mr. Jim McNeil, running a dozen candidates, and you're running at Central Fraser Valley.
That's correct.
On just a smidgen of a budget, you know.
Well, there may be a surprising amount of support.
Art Lee, how long have you been leader now?
I've been leader since 1984, March.
March 84. You're running 60-odd candidates.
That's right.
Well, I certainly hope an opposition of some considerable number is elected in British Columbia, I'll tell you that. And I shall be back after the break. Special message for the social credit media representatives out in Richmond. There will, unhappily, be no political overtones to my broadcast tomorrow, or for a couple of days. We've been preempted by the World Series, but we're going to be around town keeping our eyes on everything and come back renewed the appropriate 5 p.m. precisely.